Guys at Parties Like It is a brand new 2024 film directed by Colton and Micah Coate, if I'm pronouncing those names correctly. And this is a film that bounces through a multitude of themes as it goes along. I would say this is a film, in my opinion, that I started to enjoy more and more as it went into its second act and then its third act. The first one starts off a little bit slower, so it definitely needs some time to pick up and get you into what you're about to experience because at first I didn't really know what I was going to expect. This is also a very low budget independent film, which is never a problem. This film utilizes its budget quite well. Sometimes the acting and the writing can be a little bit shaky, but it's overall an enjoyable film in my opinion. And basically what we have going on here is we have this frat house throwing this frat party, and there's a fraternity, and I wouldn't say this is the biggest frat house I've ever seen in a film, but you got a good 30 to 50 people in there. And what happens is there's this guy, and I forget names, so bear with me, but there's this main character who is given a pledge, and his pledge is to lose his virginity in 3 hours. So he has to basically find a girl because there's no virgins allowed in this fraternity, and by any means necessary, get laid in 3 hours, or he's not allowed to be in the fraternity, or he has to go through a bunch of other, hazing things, whatever. So yeah, the film basically follows him trying to get laid, and this buddy of his, who's a total pig, by the way, trying to help him get laid by any means necessary. Now, this would otherwise be just a regular frat house film like those American Pie spin-offs or Project X or something like that, where it would be a comedy if it wasn't for the horror thrown in. And when I say horror, I literally mean a bloodbath, especially when it gets to its third act. You just got buckets of blood everywhere and a lot of violence that actually makes you feel quite sick viewing it. And themes that make you quite sick while viewing it, because the whole thing is literally two guys going after one girl, trying to get her to have sex with this guy, and they do it tremendously violently. So it turns into a horror movie quite fast. I mean, by its second act, it already starts getting quite horrific. And they're after this girl named Mary because Mary is known to be extremely promiscuous. It's no secret. And she goes there specifically to get absolutely obliterated, and she does. And she's acting like a bitch the whole time too, like she's just yelling at everybody. There's this blonde girl that really gives Mary a hard time and tries to protect her or like warn her about this guy, but at the same time like puts her down and calls her a slut. And you can get these hints that they've had an intimate encounter before, which is later on in the film it starts to, you get more hints about that, and eventually like these like cell phone videos kind of thing that kind of reveal some more secrets about those two girls. But Mary is not introduced to be the most stable person, let's just say that. And this guy goes immediately after Mary, takes her upstairs. She's drunk, she pushes him off, she says no kind of thing. He starts to get quite aggressive, but they kind of like make up and everything. He goes back down to his friend, and his friend, the pig that I was talking about, the guy who's kind of bigger in the frat house, just says like, the guy says to him, he's like, oh, I don't think she's just not feeling it, man. And then he looks at him and he's like, so make her feel like it. And it gets really just gross, and it's a very SA film, and it continues that way. The whole film is just, for lack of a better word, misogynist, because there's no other way to put it. And I really don't really like to use those buzzwords a whole lot, but I mean, the film is about two guys going after this girl, and just basically it would like if it was a slasher killer, it would be just a regular slasher movie, but instead it's two horny frat boys going after this chick, and they lock her in the washroom, and they drug her drink at one point, and like the friend tells his buddy who has the pledge to take this drink, and he actually puts the drug in there and take it upstairs, and he does, and he actually gives it to her, and then she, in her very high and drunk stupors trying to get away from him, but then the the douchebag comes upstairs and helps him, and then she's in the washroom and they're trying to break in, and she's holding the door, and they she has a phone in there and she threatens to call the cops. I'm probably revealing a little bit too much than I should, but it's not a complicated plot anyway. But I also want to get people prepared for what they're about to experience, because I didn't think this film was going to go as sickening with its themes as it does. I mean, there's a freaking coat hanger joke that this guy makes. He pulls one up and he's like, "I thought this was only be useful after the fact." Just like, Jesus Christ, man. This film is not holding back. And it goes to the end. It kind of turns and morphs at the end into this anti-SA message, and the message should be obvious already, but that's kind of what the film is playing with, and they do it in an extreme way, which I'm mixed on it, but yeah, the two guys, the one guy specifically is extremely unlikable, and he later on in the film starts to do some really awful things to pretty much everybody, and it's just it gets weird. Like, it's just filled with such dirty men. Like, there's this cop that comes to the door, and then he ends up being somebody who was in the frat like a decade before. And so he got a call because this girl called him saying that she was being sexually assaulted. And then he starts to side with the guys, and he starts to laugh with them, and he's like, "Oh, pretend I wasn't here," or like, whatever. Yeah, it's a wild one, but it gets bloody as hell, and it gets violent as hell, and the gore and the horror is here for sure, and there's some kills, I would say. There's this side plot with the fraternity and the hazing stuff that goes on that felt a little unnecessary. That definitely felt very thrown in. I was vibing with the main story that was going on. That one felt like its own thing, like it didn't even really belong. And there is this character who I would say is trans, but they're just gay. I even looked him up, and this guy is flamboyant as flamboyant can be. Like, I'm pretty sure he beats Dylan Mulvaney in flamboyance. And he's a funny character. But this film goes strangely... It's a 2024 film, but it goes strangely homophobic. And it doesn't bother me or anything, but I was watching the film, and I'm just surprised at some of the jokes that were made on this guy. And this guy signed on to the film, so obviously he didn't have a problem with it. But, like, this girl will be talking to her friend, and she'll be crying, and she's like, "Oh my god, I don't know what to do. I need a fag," meaning a cigarette, and he'll pop up. So it's like, obviously he's okay with those jokes. I mean, I find it funny, but, hearing fag in a 2024 film, meaning a cigarette, by the way, don't demonetize me or get pissed off in the comments, a cigarette, and then the guy pops up, it's like... Yeah, you see that in 80s comedies, but that's another good point. Like, you would see these kind of films and these kind of themes being done in the 80s, like in like a 16 Candles kind of movie. Even though, we're talking about a horror movie here. We're not talking about anything like that. It's a sex comedy. But there are things that happen in this film that I'm very surprised that they played with, because the whole film is about a guy trying to force himself on a girl, and the girl trying to get away from two guys, actually, and while having a drug inside her, while being like coked up and on alcohol and on a roofie, and she's just trying to escape these two guys. It's horrific to watch. It's uncomfortable to watch, but I guess that was the point. And then, yeah, it gets vicious at the end. Obviously, the hero of the story is the heroine. Spoiler alert. So it's not the guys that win, it is the girl. So just throwing that out there, because I have to. This is not a film that you want to go into not knowing if it has a happy ending. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff too. That was one joke that they made with the gay character, but there's a lot that they make with the gay character that is surprising that he was okay with. just given the culture that we're in today, kind of thing. But it was a wild film. It was an interesting film. I enjoyed it for the most part, especially the blood and the gore. I like all that stuff. But there were some things that I was like, yeah, especially the guy, the douchebag, worst character probably that I've seen all year. So, but none of the characters are really likable in this film. So everybody's just their own kind of bad, bad person kind of thing. There's not a good character in this film. Even the main character, he starts to show his true colors after a while. So I don't know. Make up your mind if you want to watch this film, because it definitely plays around with some stuff. And yeah, that's guys at parties like it. No party I've ever been to. Subscribe to Morgan Film Fan if you like to listen to my voice, or if you like my film reviews. I'll be back with more soon, so stay tuned for those. Check out what's on the channel already. Stay tuned for what's coming. Until next review, have a good one. Take care and cheers.